Canaan liberated. From the book of Joshua. After the exodus from Egypt, the people of Israel finally returned to claim the land promised to their ancestors by God Himself. Boaz and Achan lead a troop of Israelites toward a Canaanite fortress. Achan questions Boaz. "Why doesn't God make the walls fall down?" Boaz replies that perhaps God wants us to fight. This is the fortress of Ai in the year 1405 BC. It is a stronghold located in central Canaan. Suddenly the gates open and an equal force of Canaanites pour out of Ai. Achan is shocked by this confrontation. He is especially alarmed by the giant in the lead. Achan and many of the Israelites bolt from the battlefield. Boaz has confronted that ruthless giant before, but still give these Canaanites the opportunity to surrender. The giant's name is Canaan, and he is actually an Amorite from northern Canaan. Canaan mocks Boaz's offer and begins the attack. Boaz and a contingent of Israelites stand their ground. Canaan tries to cut off Achan and the other fleeing Israelites. The courageous Israelites fight valiantly, but are overcome by the now larger enemy force. Finally Boaz is cut down by Canaan. While the Canaanites rejoice, Canaan grabs Boaz's special sword. Late in the day, Achan and the others arrive at the Israelite camp. The whole camp is disturbed. Joshua, the Israelite leader, and Eleazar, the high priest, question Achan about what happened. Achan said that they were overwhelmed by the huge force that attacked them. Joshua immediately goes to the tabernacle to inquire of the Lord about why this had happened. Deborah inquires of Achan about Boaz, her husband. Achan says he does not know. Deborah, filled with dread, goes to her tent to pray. Eleazar, the high priest, and Saul, short for Salmon, a lead warrior, join Joshua in the compound. Joshua worships the Lord. He knew that he had not inquired of the Lord before sending men to Ai. Joshua's mind goes back to their first days in Canaan. The Israelites arrived at the border of Canaan just across the Jordan River. Boaz and Sal were sent to spy out the land dressed in Canaanite clothing. They approached the city of Jericho. They noticed that the Jordan Gate was guarded by a giant man, so they went to the south gate, known as the Jerusalem Gate. Sal commented about the great high walls, but Boaz was unimpressed. When the guard inquired about where they had come from, Boaz jumped him. Boaz and Sal rushed through the open gate. When their entry was known, all the gates were shut tight. They hurried to keep away from the giant. Boaz and Sal came upon an idol of Baal, where the Canaanites would sacrifice their children. They came to an open door of a harlot's house, a house built right into the city wall. Rahab, known as Ray, and her brother Dovi, welcomed them. They had heard about the Israelites, and about their great God Yahweh. The Israelites were surprised, but before they could inquire, there was a loud knock at the door. Ray tells them to hurry upstairs to hide as she delays. Ray opens the door to see the Amorite Canaan. Canaan accuses Ray of befriending those nomads, as he called the Israelites. Ray said they had stopped, but then quickly left by the north gate. Canaan threatened Ray, and left. Later, Ray helped Boaz and Sal leave by an outside window. Sal was taken in by the beauty of Ray. the Israelites left a scarlet cord hanging to mark a safe haven when they would soon attack. The next morning, Joshua and the whole Israelite nation was gathered at the Jordan. When the moment was right, Joshua and Eleazar gave the command for the ark of God to be carried into the river. As soon as the priest's feet were fully in the Jordan, the waters ran dry, and stood in a heap upstream. Then all the Israelite people crossed over on dry ground. As soon as everyone was across, the Jordan began to flow again. After everyone was settled in the camp, Joshua contemplated the conquest of Jericho. Suddenly, a man in shining clothing with a great sword stood by Joshua. Joshua understood that the Lord was on his side, but that he must be on the Lord's side too. The Lord gave Joshua an unusual plan. After giving the Canaanite people of Jericho 7 days to submit to the Israelites as their God-ordained rulers, they must submit, or they would experience God's wrath. The Canaanites wondered, mocked, and grew indifferent. Ray and Dovey were perplexed too. Yet, Canaan decided to sneak out of Jericho on the 6th night to observe. On the 7th day, Joshua commanded the Israelites to halt. Listen to the shofar blast, and give a great shout. Amazingly, there was an earthquake that very moment, which brought down the great walls of Jericho. Everyone inside met their fate, except for those in Ray's house, marked by the scarlet cord. Ray and Dovey joined Yahweh's victory procession back to the Israelite camp. Canaan, shocked by Jericho's quick demise, laid low until nightfall. Of course, there was great rejoicing among the Israelites. Joshua and Eleazar basked in their victory over Jericho, and planned for Boaz and Achan to take only a partial force to confront the Canaanite fortress of Ai. But Dovey and Ray experienced some persecution from some of the Israelites, especially from Achan. However, that night, Ray and Dovey left, not wanting to cause trouble among the Israelites. Amazingly, they had to hide from Canaan, driving his chariot hard toward the Ai fortress. Ray and Dovey hardly knew where to go. This brings us to the failed battle at Ai, and the fleeing Israelites. During Joshua and Eleazar's repentance, the Lord spoke to Joshua about sin in the camp. Achan had stolen some of the contraband from Jericho, which broke trust in God's provision. This became a lesson to all, to not mock the Lord Yahweh's commands. Meanwhile, Ray and Dovey went instead to Gibeon. They explained to the elders all that had happened at the Jordan and Jericho. Joshua had a plan from the Lord to counteract the treachery at Ai. He led a small force toward Ai, just like the previous time. The priests and ark were stationed at a nearby knoll, along with an ambush force which was hidden just to the north behind a mountain. As the gates of Ai opened, out came Canaan and the Canaanites. Canaan was confident, and mocked the Israelites, sure that he would defeat them again. Joshua put his battle plan in motion, by retreating, in order to trick the Canaanites, who charged at the supposedly fleeing Israelites. The Canaanites thought they would push these nomads back across the Jordan. Joshua signaled for the priests to carry the ark up to the high place, signifying God's presence. Simultaneously, Saul led his force toward the entrance of Ai. The priest blew the shofar, and to everyone's amazement, an angel of the Lord appeared in the clouds. Canaan was surprised by the strange apparition in the sky, and fled west in terror. With Saul and his men approaching, Con made a hasty turn toward the northwest. The Canaanites were surrounded, but did not surrender at first. Yet after many started falling, some tried to surrender. Nevertheless, the Israelites continued to take revenge upon them for the deaths of Boaz and his valiant men. The Canaanites paid the ultimate price for underestimating Israel and the true God. The Israelites set fire to the fortress of Ai, and cursed it to be a perpetual ruin, which it is to this day. Meanwhile, back at Gibeon, the elders planned to trick the Israelites into not attacking them. The Gibeonites pretended to be on a long journey from a faraway country. But when they did see the Israelites approach, there was some tension. Yet, the Israelites were taken in by the ruse, primarily because they did not inquire of the Lord, who was always ready to give direction. The Israelites actually promised to make a mutual defense agreement with the Gibeonites. No doubt the Gibeonites returned home with great rejoicing. Nevertheless, Joshua sent Saul to scout out the western highlands. As they approached another walled city, they were amazed by greetings from the walls by those same Gibeonite elders. At that very moment, there was trouble inside the city. Con had captured Ray. David tried to rescue her, but Con was driving hard in his chariot. The elders had been taken by surprise too. Con drove past the Israelites. The Israelites could only watch the chariot disappear in the distance. David and Saul were mutually happy to see each other, but both were distressed with this dreadful turn of events. What to do next, and who were these Gibeonites, really? Con rode to the far north toward the kingdom city of Hatzor. King Jabin's army would be large enough to defeat the nomads, he thought. The main idols of Hatzor were Asherah, the warrior consort to Baal, the Canaanite god of the storm. And north of Hatzor was Mount Hermon, birthplace of all the Canaanite gods. The confusion at Gibeon continued, when the lookout spotted an army of southern Canaanites approaching. They were coming to destroy Gibeon for abdicating to the nomads. Saul sent David to the Israelite camp to inform Joshua about the Gibeonites, and the desperate need of reinforcements. In the Amorite king Jabin's palace, Con presented Ray. Jabin was immediately taken in by her beauty. But Ray did her best to resist the king's advances. It was going to be a long night in Hatzor. Late into the night, David approached the Israelite camp. Joshua was having a dream of the Lord, who was just about to provide direction for Israel's next advance, but Joshua awoke before the Lord spoke. David explained to the night watchman what was happening. The guard ushered David into Joshua's tent. Joshua awoke to hear David's tale about Saul and the Gibeonites. Joshua hurried to arouse the camp. More and more southern Canaanites gathered in the valley of Ayalon, just below Gibeon. Saul prepared a plan to delay their advance. As the first wave of Canaanites attacked, Saul commanded the Gibeonites to roll boulders down the slope. The Canaanites were taken by this surprise tactic. Both the Gibeonites and Israelites celebrated this early victory. Back at Hatzor, the Amorite army was gathered, and led away by Con. Ray took notice of the approaching storm clouds, and the ominous events happening on the mountain. Jabin took it as a sign of Baal's help, but Ray wondered if it was rather the Lord Yahweh battling the false gods of Canaan. That afternoon the Israelites were marching toward Gibeon, guided by a young Canaanite boy. Joshua was amazed how the Lord was now allowing them to be led. The current stalemate at Gibeon was about to change, for the whole Amorite army was quickly approaching from the north. And treacherous Canaan had a plan too. He hid among the trees behind Gibeon waiting for his chance. King Jabin mistook the fire on Mount Hermon as a sign of needed sacrifice, so he thought to sacrifice something very valuable to himself, the beautiful ray. Suddenly, a tremendous lightning bolt struck the ground, startling them all. But in this distraction, Ray was able to escape her captors. Joshua conversed with Saul and then directed the Israelites to advance to the front line, and the priests to take the ark upon the knoll overlooking the valley. Canaan lurked in the trees as those nomads' God was brought near. Joshua sent Saul to guard the ark, and Joshua joined the front line. As Saul and the priest were distracted by the Amorites and Canaanites in the valley below, Canaan drew near to the ark of the Lord. The Israelites were surprised beyond belief. As Canaan threatened destruction of the ark, the whole Amorite army rejoiced. Yet, those same storm clouds were obscuring the late afternoon sky. Ray was going to try to do her part in confronting those pagan gods. From the very altar in the temple to Baal, she set on fire the demons' wooden idol there. The flames leaped up into a giant roar. Jabin got up and looked at the conflagration and wondered if all the pretense about Baal was now unraveling. He was the real Baal, anyway, he thought to himself. Joshua approached the holy ark of the Lord and conversed with Eleazar. As the Amorites and Canaanites began the attack, and with Canaan boldly threatening the ark, the Israelites began to pray. As the shofar began to sound, and when Canaan touched the ark, a powerful bolt of lightning struck. Boaz's sword flung away and was caught by Davi. As Canaan was burned to a crisp, the Israelites rejoiced. As Joshua readied for the attack, Canaan was kicked away from the ark of the Lord. As darkness approached, Joshua prayed for the daylight not to diminish before Israel could defeat their enemies. From deep in space the Lord had sent an ice comet toward the earth. A cloud of vapor far above the earth caught the light of the sun. In Hazor, Ray knew that something unusual from Yahweh was taking place. Deborah, in the Israelite camp, realized this too, and began to pray for a victory from the Lord. As the whole Israelite army began to advance, something amazing was seen. Giant hailstones from heaven flew over the Israelites' heads toward the Amorites. Most of that enemy army was killed by this plague from the Lord. The few remaining Amorites were chased back to Hazor by the Israelites. Very few Amorites arrived at their city, as the unusual light began to fade into night. As the Israelite army rested, Saul and Davi noticed a signal torch light from a wall window. As Saul and Davi approached, they realized it was Ray. Amazingly, she let down the same scarlet cord from Jericho. As Saul began to climb, He instructed David to inform Joshua that he would open the gate in the morning. Saul and Ray rested a short while from exhaustion. At early morning light, they found the city empty, and opened the gates without any resistance. Overlooking the deserted city from the palace balcony, they were taken by surprise by King Jabin, who had captured Ray, and threatened to kill her. He would let her go, if Joshua would submit to fighting one-to-one. David tossed Boaz's sword to Joshua. Jabin and Joshua began a desperate fight. It really was touch and go for quite a while. But the Lord was not through with this battle. Since Jabin had taken on the image of Baal, it was now the true God against an imitation God. But one look into the sky caused Jabin such a fright, he lost his bearings, and fell from the palace balcony. What awesome rejoicing Israel had that day! As Hatzor was being destroyed by fire, Saul and David hacked the Canaanite idols to pieces as Ray looked on. Jericho, Ai, and Hatzor were all burned with fire, according to the Bible's Book of Joshua. In this now free promised land, Joshua and Eleazar proclaimed the Lord Yahweh's blessing on his people, and the Lord's curses on those rejecting him. Now David was an adopted one of God's own, along with Ray, who married Saul. What a wonderful celebration the nation of Israel had that day. Israel returns to Canaan, the ancient possession of their ancestors. Many Canaanites accepted this new order. Salmon and Rehab had a son, who they named Boaz. Their great-great-grandson was David, the king after God's own heart. The end.